Unboxing and review of the Lekato CA-100 rechargeable portable amplifier. Part of the reason I'm making this video is because I've been asked more than once in the comments about what cheap amplifiers I'd recommend, and I couldn't really answer this in the comments. So at the end of the review I'll actually briefly discuss my opinions, because they are just my opinions, on what I'd recommend when looking for a cheap amp. This amp was provided to me by Lekato for this review, but as usual I'll be completely honest with you and tell you what I see. And even though it was provided by Lekato, it was shipped directly from Amazon. So before receiving this amp, all the information I've got about it is on that Amazon listing. And if you want to take a look at the listing, I'll put the link down below in the description so you can take a look at it for yourself. And it was dispatched by Amazon, which means it arrived really quickly. And here's the box it arrived in. So let's do the unboxing. Unboxing. The box it arrived in isn't a big one, but it's pretty heavy for its size. And as usual, I'll speed up parts of the unboxing so the video is a little shorter and a little less boring. Straight away you can see that the Amazon outer box is the perfect size for the inner box, meaning it needs very little extra packaging. And this is a massive improvement from years ago when Amazon used to send everything in massive boxes, and it's far more planet friendly. And the inner box is very much the same, being a clean, simple design that's the perfect size and with the perfect amount of padding to keep both the amp and the accessories safe during shipping. Right, I'll take everything out now so we can see what's in the box along with the amplifier. And there we have it. We've got the amplifier, the charger / power supply, some stick-on rubber feet, the instruction manual, and some short power cables. I'll take the amplifier out of the bag now and stick on the rubber feet so it's ready to take a proper look at. At first sight, the amp doesn't look particularly sturdy, but it really feels it, and it feels weighty as well. And looking on the back, you can see there's 7 places that are intended to take the pads, and they've provided 8 pads. So I might as well stick 1 pad in each of the intended spots. The pads go on really easily because they seat into the intended spots on the back of the amp, and the self-adhesive feels really strong as well. Once I'd stuck all the pads on, the first thing I tried to do is turn the unit on, but there was no life at all. Hopefully the on-off switch has been knocked during shipping so that the battery is completely flat. So I'll unpack the charger now and I'll put it on charge, and then if this is the problem, it'll be solved. It's a good sign that the light came on when I plugged in the charge adapter, and after a couple of hours or so the light turned green to show it was fully charged. Really, because the battery was completely flat, I should have timed how long it took to charge completely up, but sadly I forgot to. The good news is it did charge up properly and it all seems to work fine. And when you turn it on, it does the little jingle to announce that it's got Bluetooth. On initial inspection, as I said earlier, it seems very solid and it's weighty, and all the knobs have got good resistance, and there's no dragging or nothing that seems faulty, and the switches too have a good solid click to them. So my first impressions are that whilst it is plasticky, the quality is very good and everything feels very solid. I think the shape is quite unique for a guitar amp, and it's got a kind of retro 70s feel to it. And whilst most amps and speakers are designed to stand vertically, this is designed to lie on its back, which is quite unusual. Right, we've already been through half of the accessories, charging up the battery and sticking the rubber feet on. So let's take a look at the owner's manual. The owner's manual is really clear and easy to follow. On the first page is a clear illustration of the amplifier with everything numbered, and a clear explanation of what each control does. And of course at the bottom of the page is the all-important safety instructions. Over the page is the specification for the amplifier and a list of everything that comes with it. So we'll just take a quick look through the highlights. It says here that it's the Lekato CA-100 10-watt desktop guitar amp with Bluetooth. And its main features are delay, distortion, and 3 9-volt 100 milliamp power outs, which are for powering pedals. It's fitted with 2 10-watt 4-ohm high-quality speakers, and the built-in battery has a charge time of 2 hours and a 3 hours run time, but I'd imagine that depends on how many pedals you're running from the amp. And it confirms here that it is quite heavy at 1.23 kilograms, and its size is 22 centimeters by 19 centimeters by 8 centimeters. And on the last page is an illustration of how to use the amplifier with effects pedals, and I think this is really straightforward and easy to follow. Now for the important bit. Let's see what it sounds like. Sound tests. Right, firstly, let's just see how it sounds using the Bluetooth. And I'll just use bits of MP3s off my phone, using different spectrums of sound so we can see how it copes. You can see by that short test that the Bluetooth signal bypasses the effects, which is a good thing. The volume control affects both the Bluetooth and the guitar. All the bits of music there are sad fantasy tunes, and that's because I know I can play those without getting a copyright strike. That was a vintage style Strat, which has got quite weak, mellow pickups. Let's try it with something more modern, with stronger, more powerful pickups. The reason I did that test on two different guitars is because both the guitars have very different pickups, and I wanted to see how the amp would perform with the vintage style pickups and the modern pickups. And in fairness, it performed really well. And it's worth me pointing out, whilst I've tested the guitar sound and the Bluetooth sound, remember you can mix the two using the volume on your guitar and the volume on the Bluetooth device, so you can play along with your backing tracks. I quite often get asked what tunes I'm playing, and I'm not. I'm just making it up as I go along, which is why there's so many mistakes in my playing. If you'd like to learn how to make it up as you're going along, or how to improvise, I've made 2 complete courses which are available free here on YouTube. One is for the blues scales and how to use those, and one is for the modal scales or classical scales and how to use them. I'll put the links down below in the description, and they're available in both left-handed versions and right-handed versions. And if you're curious, I've done everything I can to make the sound as flat and neutral as possible, so you're getting an honest representation of how the amp sounds. There's another important and useful feature on this amp, and that's the three 9-volt 100 milliamp outputs. However, I've got no pedals to test this on, but I can do a better test, and that's to test it with a meter to see if it's actually producing a good solid 9 volts. And I can tell you all three produce a solid 9 volts. So I can reassure you that it'll power any pedal that's 9 volts and requires 100 milliamps or less. And the polarity the pedal should expect is a negative centre and a positive outer ring. But this is common and pretty standard on guitar pedals. Before I get to the conclusion, let's take a look at the sockets on the left hand side of the unit. And there we have a line out, a headphone socket, an auxiliary in, and the power supply socket. The line out can be used if you've got a more powerful amp and you want to use the effects in this unit. By plugging from the line out to the line in on a bigger amp, you can play it more loudly but still use the effects. If you wanted to run these speakers at the same time as something else, you can't do that with this line out because it cuts off the main speaker. So if you need that feature, sadly this unit hasn't got it. The headphone socket is just a regular headphone socket, so it'll be compatible with most headphones. And this too cuts off the speaker, but you'd expect that. And as usual, as I always recommend, when using headphones, turn the volume right down and then slowly turn it up, so you don't run the risk of damaging your ears. The final socket is the auxiliary in, which gives you another way of playing backing tracks with your guitar. But this time you can use a wire to connect the device to the amplifier. To balance the volume of your guitar with the device you're using as an auxiliary, you'd have to use the device's volume control, but this is quite normal for an auxiliary in. Conclusion. For an amp in this budget range, the sound of this amp is very good, and it's surprisingly deep and rich, which really surprised me. And the effects are very good as well. The fact that you've got a level, repeats and time on the delay and volume, tone and gain on the distortion is really good. I'd much rather have just 2 effects and control over those than to have lots of effects with no control. I also like the fact that it runs off its own rechargeable batteries, which means you're not constantly tied to a mains outlet. And the fact that there's 3 9-volt outs, people who use guitar pedals would find this really useful. And I really like the strange shape and the fact it lies on its back. And part of the reason for this is you don't pull it over easily. I've had numerous small amps that I've reviewed that if you just plug a lead in, just the weight of the lead causes them to fall on their faces because they're trying to make a little amp look like a big amp, and it just doesn't work. Because it lies on its back and because the input socket is quite low, this isn't a problem for the CA-100, and the rubber feet must help as well. The downside is you have to be aware that the speakers are pointing straight up, so this is most useful when it's on the floor or on the desk in front of you, because the speakers will always be projecting the sound towards the ceiling. So if you have it pointing away from yourself, you won't get the full benefit of the sound. And I'll say again, because it is important, that the sound is really good. If I was to say it was leaning any way, it's more towards the bass side, which is unusual for a small guitar amp. They're usually far too tinny for me. Something that confused me is In the listings on Amazon and anywhere else you see the CA-100, it's described as a 20 watt amp, but it isn't. It's 10 watts. What it says in the instructions is correct. However, it's got two 10 watt speakers, but that doesn't mean it produces 20 watts. It's actually a 10 watt amp. And as a result of this, if you play it on the clean sound, it's not that loud. It's loud enough for you to practice in your own room, but you couldn't play in a group of friends or in a noisy environment without the guitar being completely drowned out. And whilst this is true of the clean sound, it isn't true of the distortion. Once you click in the distortion, the volume really picks up. Hopefully, I've covered everything you need to know about this amp. But if you need more information, or you're interested in buying one, I've put links down below in the description to the Amazon listings, so you can take a look at it there. General advice. You may remember I said at the beginning, I'm going to offer some advice to people who are looking for a cheap amp. Well, here we go. The first thing is to know what you want it for. If it's to play in your room or in a fairly quiet environment, then as little as 3 or 5 watts is fine. And the amp we've just covered in this video is more than enough for practicing in your bedroom. However, if you want to play in a crowd or in a noisy environment, you need at least 20 watts. And if you're serious about forming a band, you need at least 50 watts. But if you're looking for an amp for this kind of scenario, I really recommend you get some advice, because there's so many variables in it. For example, if you're playing with an acoustic drum kit, remember they don't have any volume control, so you have to really be able to push out some volume to compete with them. Going back to the original scenario, if you're just practicing in your bedroom and learning to play the guitar, it's quite nice to have an amp with some effects on it, so you can hear what effect they have on the guitar sound. And also, if you get bored with one sound, you've got more variety to keep your interest going. However, if you want to play with a band very quickly, I recommend getting a bigger amp with no effects and use either a multi-effects pedal or individual effects pedals. And that's all the advice I can give you really, because it really is so down to each individual what they want. Everyone has different needs. So I can't tell you what you need in an amplifier. Right, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please do like, subscribe and hit the bell icon. And if you want some free guitar lessons, either visit my YouTube channel or go to www.ebooksforguitar.com, and there you'll find lots of free lessons and the free PDF ebooks that go along with those lessons. Thank you again for watching, and a special thanks for those people who are subscribed.